Welcome to For the Common Good with Juanita, a show where we inform, inspire, and empower our businesses, our communities, and people just like you. Today, we are talking about never giving up on your dream. Have you ever had situations where you had a dream, but you didn't have the support for that dream? Or people around you in your circle thought, you'll never accomplish that dream, but you never gave up. Well, that's the story of our guest today, Mr. Ray Paige. Let me tell you a little about Ray. He is the owner of Supreme Styles Beauty and Fashion, a beauty supply and clothing store in Williamsburg, Virginia. He's been in business over 20 years. Married to his lovely wife, Carla, for 19 years. They have 4 children, 4 grandchildren, and he also just recently started a nonprofit, Faith Walkers, and you'll hear more about that later. So please, for now, help me welcome to the show, Mr. Ray Paige. Welcome to the show, Ray.
Thank you. It's a blessing to be here with you.
Well, I am really excited to have you on the show. We're talking about such an important topic about never giving up on your dream. And I know you've been in business for over 20 years, so I'm just curious, how did you become interested in being an entrepreneur? And I know there's a story about your dad.
Right, yeah. So going on 20 years. So my dad, he retired from the U.S. Army. And upon retirement, he had a dream of his to start a business, a small engine repair business in Williamsburg. So just looking at my dad's dream at that time, I didn't see any in the area businesses or business owners that looked like me. So that was the first thing that really struck me. I was like, wow. I was like, so this is possible. I was like, well, my dad believes it, so it must be possible. But unfortunately, he didn't live out to see his dream come true.
Wow.
But that right there sparked the seed.
Gave you inspiration.
Exactly,
there.
yeah.
Well, I know you lived in D.C. for a while, Washington, D.C., and you became interested in fashion. Now, I know D.C. is a very progressive area. So what was it about fashion that attracted you while you were living in D.C.?
Everything, pretty much. So I just want to share this real quick. So when I moved to D.C., my dad was in the military, and I went to D.C. and I have family all over D.C.
Oh, wow.
So one of my cousins that we every time we came to D.C., we pretty much grew up, even though I didn't live in D.C. a lot, but when we come to visit, he told me, he looked at me, looked at my clothes, he said, I was going to middle school, he said, you're going to have to do better. In so many words, he said D.C. is a little different here in D.C. And I learned very quickly through my relatives and people in my neighborhood that fashion was very big in D.C. So at that time, I just fell in love with fashion. It was everywhere. Everywhere you go, I mean, middle school on up, everywhere you go was about fashion. So at that time, I thought D.C. was the fashion capital. But as I got older and started moving around, started seeing there's a lot more places that focus on fashion. But yeah, D.C. was definitely
got you interested, at least thinking more about fashion.
Exactly.
And so, from there, okay, so you're thinking about this possibility of maybe owning a business one day, inspired by your dad, thinking about fashion. But you've been in business almost 20 years, but there were challenges and there were roadblocks along the way. You dropped out of school.
Right.
I've read, and you had some brushes with the law. So tell us a little about those challenges before you started your business.
Right. So, so when I moved, actually started in D.C., I dropped out of school at 15 years old, started running the streets in D.C. with some people that already had dropped out of school, and
the
I had
wrong
a
crowds,
very
huh?
negative influences around at that time, and at the, just a lot of things I grew up
Right.
not wanting to be around, I ended up being around. Yeah, I always grew up, I saw what alcohol did to people, never wanted parts of that.
Right.
But
Right.
then I fell into that circle. Drugs, I saw what drugs did to people, and ended up falling into that circle as well. So, and that just kind of took me down a very, very dark path, and just led to me using drugs at a young age,
Right.
alcohol at a young age, and then becoming a drug dealer. So then it started just to support my habit in the beginning, and then I was able to kick the habit, and then that lifestyle, it was just
Bling bling, right?
exactly, yeah. I fell into that bling bling lifestyle, the cars, the jewelry, of course the fashion, and but at the same time, in the back of my mind, I still wanted to. I got so deep into that life that I didn't want that anymore. I had a child, and I just didn't want that lifestyle anymore. But before I could get out, I wanted to started a business then. But before I could do that, I got incarcerated.
Wow. So how long were you incarcerated?
7 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you never gave up on your dream. And
No,
that's
no.
what we're going to talk about. Even
Yeah.
after everything that you went through, you still had that dream inspired by your father. And
Yes.
I just think that's amazing. So when we come back, we're going to talk more about how you actually got started in that business, sort of living that dream. Wow, that's powerful. When we come back, you're going to hear more from Ray Paige and his story. You've been listening to For the Common Good with Juanita, and we're going to take a short break now, and we'll be right back. Don't you go anywhere. Welcome back to For the Common Good with Juanita. And today we're talking about never giving up on your dream. And we're talking to our guest, Ray Paige. So Ray, I wanted to ask you, with everything you've been through and, having been incarcerated, you still had that dream about starting your business. But it's easy to talk about it, but actually getting it, doing it. Everybody wants to start a business, but very few people do. How did you get started? What was the beginning of that process?
Well, the beginning of the process was really just getting my mind right while I was incarcerated. That's where it started.
How did you do that? I'm just curious. I mean, you're 7 years, and what were you thinking along that time? I mean, were you still encouraged, even with everything going on?
Everything going on, I was still encouraged.
Wow.
I had a supporting mother that was there for me, and I always thought about my mom. I wanted to make her proud. And I was thinking to myself, I said, well, my mom is out there by herself. She's able to take care of herself and send me money when I need stuff. And so I know I can get out there, a grown man at this time, I can get out there and be successful. So it started with mindset. Getting my mind right. So just reading books while I was incarcerated, just being inspired. I was always inspired by Russell Simmons.
Oh, yeah.
I was always inspired by him and a couple of other entrepreneurs that started through the music business. So, so when I came home, I was working construction, and like I say, fashion was still deep in me. I was thinking, okay, I know people always buying clothes, and I like to stay up with the current trends. And so I would start by, when I moved back to Williamsburg, I would just go to different stores and see what they had and see who was willing to sell me something. And I would just tell them directly that I'm looking to buy something that I could resell. So I just started, there were no wholesalers in this area, Williamsburg, Newport News area. So I would go into stores and ask people, and then I would end up buying body oils, hats, jeans, and things like that. But one day I was doing that, and on my way back home, I saw a guy out vending. He had a table set up in a tent, and he was selling tennis shoes and body oils and sweatsuits and different things of that matter. And so I stopped and I talked to him, and a real nice guy. And I was telling him what I wanted to do.
Right.
And so he sold me some things off of his table and that I could resell on my job to the guys I was working construction with and through neighborhoods I was familiar with right here in Williamsburg. So that, long story short, that guy ended up being my business partner now for 18 years.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I don't believe that there are any accidents. Nothing happens by accident.
No.
It was meant to be.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Wow. So let's talk about the beauty supply and clothing industry.
Yes.
You know that, let's just, keep it real.
Yeah.
African Americans are very large consumers in this market.
The largest.
In the beauty supply market.
Yes.
But it's very little ownership in the market.
Exactly.
Can you talk about that?
Oh, most definitely. So being in this business for going on 20 years, I noticed early on that the beauty supply stores that cater to African American people, none of them were owned by us. They were all Asian owned. So I looked at that, and my wife would go buy things and sometimes send me to the store. And I just looked at that, and I always wondered, I said, why don't we own any of these stores? And they're all Asian owned. So I was just looking at that, and then we started a clothing store first. So ladies would come in and ask us, why don't you sell, try to get beauty supplies? And we just kept hearing that over and over, that piqued our interest, that we went out. And the first person I used to buy clothes from, a lady, Asian lady. So I asked her, I said, well, we're trying to get into beauty supplies and selling beauty supplies. Do you know anybody we can buy from? And she was like, shh, hold up. I was like, well, what's going on? She looked out the door, make sure nobody was watching. This was in the flea market, so people was everywhere. So she was like, come. Like it was top secret. She was like, I'm going to give you a contact information. Don't tell them I gave this to you.
Okay.
So we would learn later on that the industry, and it's pretty much the beauty supply stores. People see Asians, a lot of people say they're Chinese, but typically the Korean owned. And so we found out that the beauty supply industry, the culture of it, does not want us African Americans owning the stores that cater to the African American stores. I mean, to the African American customers. So it's been a strategic plan to keep that a lock on that. So that right there was just fueled me and my business partner even more. We was like, oh, no. This is not right.
More, huh?
Yeah, so yeah, it's been a struggle. It's been well worth it though, as well, because we should have more African American owned beauty supply stores.
Well, I think maybe people see that, but I don't think that they realize that there are just so few African American owned business supply, beauty supply places. And so just want to make sure that we bring that to light.
Oh yeah.
This is really exciting. I want to talk about your vision for the future. So you've been in business almost 20 years with, your beauty supply store. What are you thinking for the future and where to take that? Have you ever thought about franchising or anything like that for the business?
Well, yes, exactly. Franchise is a move that my business partner and I are thinking about, and we're moving towards that direction. So right now, we realize, there's two of us, that we cannot be a team of two and expand. So that is what we're doing now. We're building a team. We've been surrounding ourselves with some very very smart people, and they always say, if you're the smartest person in your circle, you need a bigger circle. So
Exactly.
we're realizing now that we need a bigger circle. We need people that are better than us in certain areas to put the pieces of the puzzle together so we can expand, so we can move towards franchising and have more African American owned beauty supply stores in the United States.
Wow. I'm loving that. That's really exciting. And you'd think that that would be enough for you, but not for you, because you also, and I want to talk more about this, we'll talk about this in our next segment, the nonprofit that you started called Faith Walkers.
And yes.
And so we want to talk about that because based on your experience, your life experience, that really inspired you to do more to help others. And, you know, as busy as you are, to find that kind of inspiration to help others along in their journey, especially young people. I just think that's something that we definitely want to talk about. So when we come back, we'll talk more about the nonprofit. You've been listening to For the Common Good with Juanita, and I've been talking to Ray Paige, business owner of Supreme Styles Beauty and Fashion. When we come back, we'll hear more of his story. We'll be right back. Welcome back to For the Common Good with Juanita. Exciting story today. We're talking about never giving up on your dream. And our guest, Ray Paige, has talked about his journey and basically starting a business. And now I want to talk about his nonprofit, because for most people, being in business is enough, just the day-to-day of running a business, but not for Ray. He decided that having a nonprofit was something that he wanted to do. So Ray, can you talk about your nonprofit and your partners, your partners in your nonprofit?
Okay, yes. So our nonprofit name is Faith Walkers. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and so it's something that's been on my heart for years. I have done through my business, I've done a lot of mentoring and tried to be an inspiration to the community for years. But there's a couple of missing pieces to that puzzle, as well as I had two guys from Williamsburg that has done a lengthy time in prison. They were both very influential. A lot of young guys looked up to them. So I always thought, I said, dang, if I could have them with me, that we can impact. One was on one side of Williamsburg, the other one had a lot of influence on the other side. And they both spent over 24 years in prison, in federal prison. So
Each. Oh my
right,
gosh.
Each.
So combined, you're talking about 60 years of incarceration between the three of you.
Yeah. So one of them came home first, and he didn't directly come back to the Williamsburg area. He was a former gang leader in Williamsburg, so they didn't even really want him in Williamsburg. So he went to a halfway house. The standard is 6 months halfway house. They made him do a year in a halfway house. But at 24 years, he was a changed man. Yeah, he's not the person that they remember. Very, very good guy. And the other one, Tony, so Marty Wright and Tony Ovis, those are two, and they're the co-founders, and I'm the president.
Wow.
So we got together, we talked, and what I had on my heart is what they had on their heart while they were incarcerated. So they had we all had the same heart, the same mission to make a change in young people's lives, because we don't want our youth to go through the what we went through, to follow because a lot of people looked up to them. A lot of people looked up to me, and I have time now that they can look up to me in a different way. They say, okay, so Ray's he used to be in the streets, he used to do this, that, and the third, but now he's a business owner. Now he's supporting his community. So a lot of the community efforts I've done as a business, we're putting it together through Faith Walkers, and we're building a nice team with Faith Walkers.
So you have like a mentoring program, or is that something you're looking towards doing for the youth?
Exactly. So right now we're still in the building phase, the structuring phase. Because when we started the nonprofit, I'm gonna be totally honest with you. When we started the nonprofit organization, we wanted to do everything for everybody. Yeah. And slowly but surely, I mean, we had a whole list and things we wanted to do this, but as we progress, we come to realize we cannot do everything.
Yeah, it takes
and there,
time.
And there are other nonprofits out here that are doing different things. So we made it our mission to not just try to save the whole community by ourselves, but to network with different nonprofits. So we have actually been teaming up with different nonprofits that are doing different things in the community,
and even
so everybody
speaking
can bring
engagements.
exactly.
I mean, for a young, a child to see your and hear your journey.
Exactly.
About your overcoming so many obstacles. Where it led to, and basically where you are now. I think just that in itself, to be able to see that kind of success, because we don't often see, our young people don't often see that. Especially in the African American community, that kind of success, where you're looking at someone who's overcome so much, who can talk about it, but then talk about, how to be successful. I just think that's incredible.
Right. And since you mentioned that, just last Saturday, right here in Williamsburg at the Quarter Path Recreation Center, we were part of a Stop the Gun Violence basketball tournament.
Wow.
And so our co-founder, Tony, Ovis, his brother, Brian Ovis, he has an organization called We Ball Foundation. And I've been supporting his initiatives for years, but now he's got his official 501c3. He's been motivated by his brother coming home. And so we've been doing a lot of events together. So just last Saturday, and Tony and Marty, they both spoke. As you said, they both spoke at that event and just touched a lot of youth were there, and that could be, and they've heard these names in the community, Tony Overs, they've heard Marty Wright, they know me from Supreme Styles, so just to see things come together. So Faith Walkers, we are slowly but surely making our mark, but we have a lot of plans, and I think we're going to do a lot of good for the community.
That sounds awesome. So I know that there are viewers out there who are watching the show saying, well, how can I reach him? If I want to get in touch with him, what would be the best way for someone to contact you who may be listening to the show now? Okay,
so yeah, we have a couple of ways you can get in contact with me. You can go to my website for the business, which is supremestyles1.com, supremestyles, the number 1.com, or you can go to our Faith Walkers website, and that's faithwalkersva.org.
Great, and we'll also have the information in our credits list at the end of the show. Ray, thank you so much for being on the show. It has been such an honor to hear your story and your passion, and I just applaud you with everything you're doing. So I wish you all the best and continued success.
Yes.
You are so welcome. You are so welcome. And thank you for tuning in to For the Common Good with Juanita. We'll see you next time.